The storm within Chapter 1. The call the afternoon light filtered through the Venetian blinds of Oliver Chen's corner office on 32nd floor, casting amber stripes across the dark mahogany desk that had cost him more than his first car. May in Chicago meant the city was finally shaking off winter's grip, and from his window, Oliver could see Lake Michigan stretching out like hammered steel under a pale sky. His office was a shrine to two lives, the one he'd built and the one he'd lost. Chicago Cubs memorabilia lined the walls, a signed Ryne Sandberg jersey in a shadow box, a baseball from the '84 season, photographs of Wrigley Field at sunset. His father had been a Cubs fan, back when they'd lived in Oklahoma and had to catch games on the radio, the signal crackling through the prairie night. Oliver had kept that love alive, even after his father's heart attack when Oliver was 16. But it was the photographs on his desk that drew his eye most often, especially on days like this when the work felt hollow and the silence of the office pressed in around him. Sarah smiled at him from a silver frame, her blonde hair caught mid-laugh at some joke he could no longer remember. The photo had been taken at Navy Pier, 3 years ago, before the black ice and the semi-truck and the phone call that had shattered his world into before and after. Next to Sarah's photo sat a more recent picture, Tiffany and Annabelle at the Lincoln Park Zoo, Tiffany's arm around her little sister's shoulders, both girls grinning at the camera with gap-toothed smiles that made his chest ache. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days since Sarah died. Not that he was counting. Oliver turned back to his monitors, 4 20-inch screens arranged in a semicircle on his custom-built desk. Each displayed a different meteorological data stream, Doppler, satellite imagery, atmospheric pressure readings, and a live feed of weather stations across the Midwest. His company, Chen Weather Analytics, had built its reputation on precision. Fortune 500 companies paid him 6 figures to predict weather patterns that could affect their supply chains. Airlines consulted him before routing flights. He'd been interviewed on CNN twice. But today, the screens showed nothing particularly interesting. A weak cold front pushing through Iowa, some scattered thunderstorms in Missouri, standard May weather for the heartland. The phone on his desk rang, not his business line but his personal cell, the ringtone cutting through the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Oliver glanced at the caller ID. Unknown number, but with an Oklahoma area code 580 he almost didn't answer. Probably a telemarketer, but something made him pick up. Oliver Chen. Jesus Christ, you sound like a robot. Oliver Chen, the voice on the other end mimicked, then broke into a familiar laugh. It's me, man, Sam Whittaker. Oliver sat back in his leather chair, a smile tugging at his lips for the first time that day. Holy shit, how long has it been? Too damn long. Not since you left Frogville and went all big city on us. Sam's Oklahoma drawl was thick as molasses, unchanged by the years. How you been, Ollie? No one had called him Ollie in over 2 decades. I'm good, busy, you know how it is. Oliver's eyes drifted back to Sarah's photo. About you. You still in Frogville. Born here, gonna die here, I reckon. Got married to Jenny Hallbrook, you remember. We got 3 boys now. I'm running the hardware store with my uncle, Jenny Hallbrook. Wasn't she the one who threw up on the tilt-a-whirl at the county fair? Yeah, that's her. Sam laughed. She's never lived it down. But listen, Ollie, I didn't call just to catch up, though we should doth it too. I called because, well, you're the weather guy now, right? I seen you on TV and everything. Oliver straightened in his chair, his professional instincts kicking in. Yeah, I run my own meteorology firm. Why, what's going on? It's the weather out here. This whole week's been weird, man. Real weird. The sky's been this sick yellow-green color and the air feels, I don't know how to describe it, heavy. Wrong. My uncle says it reminds him of '74 before that F4 tore through Chickasha. Oliver was already pulling up his Oklahoma data on the second monitor. What's the forecast saying? Local news says scattered storms, maybe some hail. But Ollie, I'm telling you, something feels off. The animals are acting strange. My neighbor's horses won't go in the barn. The birds have been quiet for 2 days. And you know I'm not some superstitious old woman, but Oliver studied the data streaming across his screen. A low-pressure system was developing over the Texas panhandle, moving northeast, atmospheric instability, wind shear. The ingredients were there for severe weather, certainly, but nothing that screamed catastrophic. Sam, I'm looking at the models right now. You'll probably get some strong storms, yeah. Maybe some large hail, damaging winds. But it's May in Oklahoma. That's tornado season, you know that. I know, but would you maybe come take a look? I mean, you're thickspert. And hell, when's the last time you came home? Your mama asks about yow every time I see her at the grocery store. Mention of his mother sent a pang of guilt through Oliver's chest. He called here every Sunday, but he hadn't been back to Frogville since Sarah's funeral. His mother had flown to Chicago for that, had stayed for 2 weeks helping with the girls, cooking meals he couldn't eat, holding him while he cried in the middle of the night. I don't know, Sam. I've got a lot going on here. The girls have school and school's almost out, ain't it? And Ollie, man, I wouldn't ask if I didn't think it was important. Just come for a few days. Bring your fancy equipment. If I'm wrong, and you can laugh at me over a beer. But if I'm right. Oliver looked at his calendar. He had a conference call on Thursday, but nothing be rescheduled. And the truth was, the thought of getting out of Chicago, off going somewhere that didn't have memories of Sarah on every corner, held a certain appeal. When are you thinking? Soon as you can get here. This system's supposed to move in over the weekend. If you left tomorrow, you'd have a few days to set up, check things out. Oliver drummed his fingers on the desk, thinking. Tiffany and Annabelle would love seeing their grandmother, and maybe a change of scenery would be good for all of them. The apartment had felt like a mausoleum lately, full of ghosts and silence. All right, he heard himself say. I'll drive down tomorrow, should get there by evening. Seriously, man, that's great, your mama's gonna be thrilled. And Ollie, thanks. I know I'm probably being paranoid, but better safe than sorry. That's what we say in the business. After they hung up, Oliver sat for a long moment staring at the Oklahoma data on his screens. Sam was probably right to be cautious. Severe weather was nothing to take lightly. But the models really didn't show anything extraordinary. A typical May severe weather outbreak. He'd seen hundreds of them. Still, something about Sam's call had unsettled him. Maybe it was the mention of his mother. Maybe it was the idea of going home after so long. Or maybe it was just the restlessness that had been building in him for months, the feeling that he was going through the motions of a life rather than actually living one. He picked up his office phone and dialed his assistant. Marcy, I need you to clear my schedule for the next week. Family emergency. Reschedule the Thursday call with the airline people and tell the team I'll be working remotely. Everything okay, Mr. Chen? Yeah, everything's fine. I just need to take a trip home. Home. The word felt strange in his mouth. Chicago had been home for over 20 years. But Frogville, Oklahoma, population 5,000, one stoplight, more churches, Thangas stations. That was where he'd grown up. Where he'd learned to read the sky, to understand the language of clouds and wind. Where he'd fallen in love for the first time, though that had been puppy love, nothing like what he'd had with Sarah. Oliver shut down his monitors and gathered his things. He'd need to pack his portable weather station, his laptop, his backup hard drives. And he'd need to talk to the girls, explain that they were taking a road trip to see Grandma. As he locked his office and headed for the elevator, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling Faith was standing on the edge of something. A threshold. The air felt charged, the way it did before a storm, full of potential energy waiting to be released. He told himself it was just the weather. He told himself it was just a visit home. But deep down, in the part of him that had always been able to sense when the sky was about to break open, Oliver knew that something was coming, something big. Chapter 2. The road home, the drive from Chicago to Frogville. Oklahoma took 11 hours if you pushed it, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. Oliver had made the trip countless times in his youth, heading to college in Illinois, coming back for holidays. That final trip when packed everything he owned into a U-Haul and left for good. But he'd never made it with two young girls in the backseat. Dad, Annabelle's touching me. Am not. R2, she keeps putting her foot on my side. Oliver glanced in the rearview mirror at his daughters. Tiffany, 10 years old and already showing signs of the teenager she'd become, had her arms crossed and was glaring at her little sister. Annabelle, 7 and still baby-faced, was doing her best to look innocent while her foot was clearly over the invisible line that divided the backseat. Girls, we've been in the car for 3 hours. Can we please have peace for the next date? 8 hours. Annabelle groaned. That's forever. That's Oklahoma, Oliver said. It's far away. Didn't we just fly? Tiffany asked, not for the first time. Because I need to bring my equipment and because road trips are fun. Remember, we talked about this. You said road trips are fun. We didn't agree. Oliver suppressed a smile. Tiffany had her mother's sharp wit, her ability to find the logical flaw in any argument. Sarah would have been proud. The thought of Sarah brought the familiar ache, but it was duller now than it had been. 2 years had softened the edges of his grief, though it never truly went away. It was like a scar, always there, sometimes tender but no longer an open wound. Tell you what, Oliver said. Next gas station, we'll get snacks. Whatever you want. Whatever we want. Annabelle's eyes lit up. Within reason, no live animals. What about candy? Candy's fine. What about soda? 1 soda each. What about? Annabelle, don't push it. They drove south through Illinois, the Chicago skyline shrinking in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. The landscape flattened out, becoming a patchwork off farmland and small towns. Oliver had forgotten how much sky there was out here, how it seemed to go on forever, unbroken by buildings or mountains. His portable weather station was packed in the trunk, along with 2 suitcases of clothes and a box of the girls' toys and books. The station wasn't as sophisticated as his office setup, but it would give him real-time data on atmospheric conditions, wind speed and direction, temperature, humidity and barometric pressure. If Sam was right and something unusual was brewing, Oliver would be able to see it coming. They stopped for lunch at a McDonald's in Springfield, and again for gas and snacks in St. Louis. The girls were surprisingly good travelers once they'd been properly bribed with sugar. Tiffany read her babysitter's club book while Annabelle colored in a Disney princess coloring book, and for long stretches, the only sound was the hum of Thingen and the country music station Oliver had found on the radio. As they crossed into Oklahoma, the landscape changed again. The trees thinned out and the land took on a reddish tint. The sky seemed bigger here, more present. Oliver felt something in his chest loosen, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Dad. Tiffany's voice came from the backseat. What was it like growing up here? Oliver considered the question. Different from Chicago, quieter, everybody knew everybody. Your grandma used to say you couldn't sneeze in Frogville without someone saying bless you before you even got home. That sounds annoying, Tiffany said. Sometimes it was. But it was also nice in a way. People looked out for each other. When your grandpa died, the whole town showed up with casseroles and offers to help. We had so much food we had to give half of it away. I don't remember Grandpa, Annabelle said quietly. You weren't born yet, sweetie. He died before I even met your mom. You miss him every day. They drove in silence for a while. Oliver thought about his father, Jack Chen, the only Chinese-American in Frogville, who'd moved there in the 60s to work as an engineer at an oil refinery. He'd met Oliver's mother, Linda, at a church social, and somehow Theron-likely romance had worked. Jack had been the one who'd first taught Oliver about weather, who'd shown him how to read the clouds and predict when a storm was coming. A good meteorologist, his father used to say, doesn't just look at the data, he feels the weather. He understands it in his bones. Oliver had built his career on data, on models and algorithms and probability, but he'd never forgotten his father's words. Sometimes you had to trust your instincts. They reached Frogville just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orangey purple. The town looked exactly as Oliver remembered it. Main Street with its brick storefronts, the old movie theater that now showed films 3 months after they premiered everywhere else, the First Baptist Church with its white steeple, the Dairy Queen where he'd worked his first job. And there, at the edge of town, was his mother's house, a modest ranch-style home with a wraparound porch and a yard full of oak trees. The porch light was on, and Oliver could see his mother's silhouette in the doorway before he'd even parked the car. "Grandma," Annabelle shrieked, unbuckling her seatbelt before Oliver had fully stopped. "Wait until the car stops, Annie." But it was too late. Both girls were out of the car and running toward the porch, where Linda Chen was already coming down the steps, her arms open wide. Oliver got out more slowly, stretching his stiff legs and back. 11 hours in a car was no joke at 46. Oliver, His mother's voice carried across the yard. She was hugging both girls at once, but her eyes were on him. "You're here, you're really here." He walked over and let himself be pulled into the embrace. His mother was smaller than remembered, more fragile. When had she gotten old? "Hi, Mom. Me look at you." She held him at arm's length, her eyes scanning his face. "You're too thin. Are you eating?" "I'm eating fine, Mom." "These girls, my goodness, you've both grown so much." "Tiffany, you're practically a young lady now. And Annabelle, look at those curls." The girls beamed under their grandmother's attention. Oliver felt a pang of guilt. He should have brought them here more often. His mother was 72 now, and Hawk knew how many more years she had. He'd been so wrapped up in his grief, in his work, that he'd neglected the living. Come in," Linda said, ushering them toward the house. "I've got dinner ready. I made your favorite chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes." "You didn't have to." "Hush. When else do I get to cook for my son and granddaughters? Let me spoil you a little." House smelled like home, like cooking and old wood and the lavender sachets his mother kept in every closet. Nothing had changed. The same floral couch in the living room, the same family photos on the walls, the same cross-stitch sampler above the fireplace that read, "Bless this home." Over dinner, Oliver's mother caught him up on all the Frogville gossip: who had gotten married, who had died, who had moved away, and who had moved back. The girls listened with half-interest, more focused on the homemade apple pie that was promised for dessert. "Sam Whitaker called me," Linda said, passing Oliver the gravy. "Said you were coming to look at the weather." "Yeah, he seemed worried about this system coming in. Probably nothing, but I figured I'd check it out. And it's been too long since we visited." His mother reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you're here, honey, whatever the reason." After dinner, after the girls had been fed pie and sent to watch TV in the living room, Oliver went out to his car to unload his equipment. The night air was warm and humid, and the sky was clear, full of stars you could never see in Chicago. But there was something in the air, a heaviness that Sam had mentioned on the phone. The kind of atmospheric pressure that made your ears pop and your skin prickle. Oliver set up his portable weather station in the backyard, mounting the anemometer on a pole and connecting the sensors to his laptop. Within minutes, he was getting real-time data. Temperature 78 degrees F, humidity 82%, barometric pressure 29.87 and falling, wind out of the south at 12 mph. The falling pressure was interesting. It suggested a low-pressure system was approaching, which matched the forecast models. But nothing here screamed danger, just typical pre-storm conditions. Still, Oliver found himself staring at the southern horizon where heat lightning flickered silently in the distance. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Trust your instincts, son. The sky will tell you what's coming if you know how to listen." "What are you trying to tell me?" Oliver thought. The sky didn't answer. Chapter 3. Regained by Friday afternoon, Oliver had settled into a comfortable routine. He'd set up a makeshift weather center in his mother's dining room, with his laptop and monitors displaying real-time data from his backyard station and feeds from the National Weather Service. The girls had quickly adapted to small-town life, spending their days playing in the yard and helping their grandmother bake cookies. The weather had been quiet so far, some afternoon thunderstorms on Thursday, but nothing severe. Oliver was beginning to think Sam's concerns had been overblown. The forecast for the weekend still showed a chance of strong storms, but the models weren't indicating anything catastrophic. Still, he kept monitoring. That was his job, after all. And there was something about being back in Oklahoma, back in Tornado Alley, that made him more vigilant. He'd grown up with the threat of tornadoes, had spent countless hours in his family's storm cellar while sirens wailed overhead. You didn't forget that kind of fear. "Dad." Tiffany appeared in the doorway of the dining room. "Grandma says we're out off milk. Can we go to the store?" Oliver glanced at his watch. 4:30 p.m. The data could wait for an hour. "Sure, let me grab my keys." "We get pizza instead of cooking?" Annabelle asked hopefully, appearing behind her sister. "What's wrong with Grandma's cooking?" "Nothing, but we've had home cooking for 2 days. I want pizza." Oliver looked at his mother, who was smiling from the kitchen. "It's fine with me. I could use a night off from cooking." "All right, pizza it is." "Where's the best place in town?" Gino's on Main Street. Same place that was there when you were a kid. Tell Gino I said hello, he'll probably give you a discount. 20 minutes later, Oliver and the girls were walking into Gino's Pizza, a small restaurant with red-checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and tomato saucy heavy in the air. The place was busy for a Friday evening. Families with kids, teenagers and dates, a group of older men playing cards in the corner. Oliver approached the counter, where a heavy-set man with a mustache was tacking orders. Help you? Yeah, I'd like to order a large pepperoni and a large cheese to go. My mom, Linda Chen, says hello. The man's face lit up. Linda's boy, Oliver, right? I heard you were in town, Gino Marchetti. He extended a hand across the counter. You probably don't remember me. I took over this place from my uncle about 15 years ago. Nice to meet you. Oliver shook his hand. How long for the pizzas? About 20 minutes. You can wait here or come back. We'll wait, thanks. Oliver turned to find a place to sit, and that's when he saw her, or rather, he thought he saw her. The woman was standing near the jukebox, feeding quarters into the machine. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and something about her profile was familiar. Very familiar. Regan, Oliver said, taking a step toward her. The woman turned, and Oliver realized immediately that he'd made a mistake. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe mid-20s, and her face was unfamiliar. Sorry, no, she said, looking confused. Sorry, I thought you were someone else. I'm Regan. Voice came from behind him, and Oliver turned slowly. She was standing by the drink cooler, a Coke in her hand, and for a moment Oliver forgot how to breathe. Regan Murphy, he would have known her anywhere, even after 25 years. She was shorter than remembered, maybe 52, with dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and green eyes that seemed to catch the light. She'd filled out since high school, her figure recurving in ways that made Oliver suddenly very aware that he was starring. Oliver Chen. She was smiling now, a wide, genuine smile that transformed her whole face. Oh my God, is that really you? Regan, wow, hi. Oliver felt like a teenager again, tongue-tied and awkward. I didn't know you were still in Frogville, still here, never left. She walked over, and Oliver caught a whiff of her perfume, something floral and light. I heard you were in town. Sam Whitaker mentioned it at the grocery store. Small town, you know. Yeah, I remember. Oliver gestured to his daughters, who were watching this exchange with interest. These are my girls, Tiffany and Annabelle. Hi, Regan said warmly. I'm Miss Murphy. I teach 5th grade at Frogville Elementary. That's my grade, Tiffany said. Well, I'll be in 5th grade next year. Then maybe you'll be in my class if you move here. We're not moving here, Tiffany said quickly. We live in Chicago. An awkward silence fell. Oliver scrambled for something to say. So, teaching, that's great. You always were good with kids. I love it. Been teaching for 15 years now. Same school we went to, actually. Mrs. Henderson finally retired last year. Remember her? The math teacher who made us do times tables every morning. How could I forget? They both laughed, and some of the awkwardness dissipated. Oliver found himself studying Regan's face, looking for the girl he'd known and the woman she'd become. They'd been friends as kids, part of the same group that had roamed Frogville on Thairbanks, swimming in the creek in summer and sledding down Miller's Hill in winter. He'd had a crush on her in 8th grade, but nothing had ever come of it. Then high school had happened, and they drifted into different circles. He'd left for college and never looked back. What brings you back to town? Regan asked. Besides visiting your mom, I mean. Weather, actually. Sam called me, said he was worried about this system coming in. I'm a meteorologist now. I run my own firm in Chicago. I know. I saw you on CNN once. Very impressive. Oliver felt his face heat up. It was just a quick interview about. Order for Chen, Gino called from the counter. That's us, Oliver said. Hey, listen, it was really great seeing you. Maybe we could. Do you want to get coffee sometime? Regan blurted out, then immediately looked embarrassed. Sorry, that was forward. I just meant, to catch up, if you have time. Oliver felt something flutter in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. I'd like that. Yeah, coffee sounds great. Tomorrow. There's a new place on Main Street, the Daily Grind. 10 o'clock, perfect. They exchanged phone numbers, Regan writing hers on a napkin, Oliver programming it into his cell phone, and then Oliver was gathering his pizzas and herding his daughters out the door. Dad, Tiffany said as they walked to the car, who was that lady? An old friend from when I lived here. She was pretty, Oliver tried to sound casual. You were blushing. I was not, too, Annabelle chimed in. Your face was all red, of you in the car now. But Oliver was smiling as he drove back to his mother's house and he couldn't quite make himself stop. Chapter 4. Coffee and Memories. Oliver woke up Saturday morning to the sound of rain pattering against the window. He checked his phone, 7:15 a.m. The weather station data showed the first bands of thunderstorm system had arrived overnight. Scattered showers and thunderstorms, nothing severe yet. He got up and padded to the dining room, where his laptop was still running. The radar showed a line of storms stretching from Texas up through Oklahoma, moving northeast at about 25 mph. Behind the line, the atmosphere was unstable, high Cape values, strong wind shear. The ingredients for severe weather were definitely there. But the Storm Prediction Center had only issued a slight risk for the area. Possible large hail, damaging winds, maybe an isolated tornado or two. Standard stuff for May in Oklahoma. Oliver made a note to check the data again after his coffee date with Regan. Coffee date. Was it a date? Or just two old friends catching up? He told himself it didn't matter. He was just being friendly. Regan was just being friendly. It didn't mean anything. But he found himself taking extra care getting ready, changing his shirt twice before settling on a blue button-down that Sarah had always said brought out his eyes. Then felt guilty for thinking about what Sarah would have thought and changed into a plain gray t-shirt instead. You look nice, his mother said when he came into the kitchen. She was macking pancakes for the girls who were still in their pajamas watching Saturday morning cartoons. I'm just getting coffee with an old friend. Regan Murphy. Oliver stopped mid-reach for the coffee pot. How did you? Gino called me last night. Said you two looked pretty cozy. We talked for 5 minutes. Hum. Linda flipped a pancake, not looking at him. She's a lovely girl. Woman, I should say, never married, you know. Dated that Johnson boy for a while, but it didn't work out. Mom, I'm just saying. You're allowed to have coffee with a woman, Oliver. Sarah wouldn't want you to be alone forever. Mention of Sarah's name made Oliver's chest tight. I'm not ready for. I didn't say you were. I said you're allowed to have coffee. Linda turned to face him, her expression gentle. Honey, you've been grieving for 2 years. That's good. That's healthy. But at some point you have to start living again. Not for me, not for the girls, but for yourself. Oliver didn't know what to say to that, so he just kissed his mother on the cheek and headed out. The Daily Grind was a small coffee shop that had clearly been designed to look like a Starbucks but with a local twist. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, local art for sale on the walls. It was busy for a Saturday morning, full of people reading newspaper and working on laptops. Regan was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She waved when she saw him, and Oliver felt that flutter in his chest again. Hi, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Sorry if I'm late. You're right on time. I got here early, teacher habit. I'm always 15 minutes early, tow everything. She gestured to the counter. I didn't know what you liked, so I waited. They ordered black coffee for Oliver, a vanilla latte for Regan, and settled back at their table. For a moment neither of them spoke, and Oliver felt the awkwardness creeping back in. So, Regan said finally, 25 years, that's a long time. Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. You left right after graduation, didn't you? Went to the University of Illinois. Yeah, full scholarship for meteorology. It was too good to pass up. You never came back. Well, until now. There was no accusation in her voice, just a statement of fact, but Oliver felt defensive anyway. I came back for visits, holidays sometimes, and my mom came to Chicago a lot. I didn't mean it as a criticism, I get it. Frogville's not exactly a metropolis. Most people who leave don't come back. You stayed. Regan wrapped her hands around her latte cup. I did. I went to college in Oklahoma City, just 2 hours away, and then came right back. Got a job at the elementary school and never left. Do you ever regret it? Staying, I mean? She considered the question. Sometimes. When I see people's vacation photos on Facebook, or when I think about all the places I've never been. But mostly no, I love either. I love my students, I love knowing everyone in town, I love that I can walk down Main Street and wave to 20 people I know. It's home. I used to feel that way, Oliver said quietly. But after my dad died and then I went away to college. I don't know, Chicago became home. The big city, the anonymity, the opportunities. I built a whole life there. Told me about your wife. I'm so sorry, Oliver. The sympathy in her voice was genuine, and Oliver felt his throat tight. Thank you, it's been hard, really hard, but I'm managing. The girls keep me going. They seem like great kids. They are. Tiffany's so smart it's scary sometimes. And Annabelle's just pure sunshine. They've been through so much, but they're resilient. They talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing easily once they got past the initial awkwardness. Regan told him about her students, about the challenges of teaching in a small school with limited resources. Oliver told her about his business, about the satisfaction of predicting weather patterns and helping companies make better decisions. You ever miss it? Regan asked. The storms, I mean, the excitement of tornadoes. Sometimes. Chicago gets severe weather, but it's not the same. There's something about the plains, the way you can see the storms coming from miles away. The power of it. It's terrifying and beautiful at the same time. That's why you came back, isn't it? Sam's call was just an excuse. Oliver started to deny it, then stopped. Maybe, I don't know, I've been feeling stuck, Aegis, like I'm going through the motions. Work, home, the girls' activities, sleep, repeat. I thought maybe coming back here, seeing where I came from might help me figure out where I'm going. Has it? I've only been here 2 days. Fair point. Regan smiled. But for what it's worth, I'm glad you came back. Even if it's just for a visit. Their eyes met across the table, and Oliver felt something shift. A connection, a spark, something he hadn't felt since Sarah. It scared him and thrilled him in equal measure. Would you want to have dinner? The words were out before he could stop them. Tonight, I mean. There's that steakhouse on the edge of town. Is it still there? The cattleman's. Yeah, it's still there, and I'd love to. Great, I'll pick you up at 7. It's a date. The word hung in the air between them. A date. Not just coffee between old friends. An actual date. Oliver should have felt guilty, should have felt like he was betraying Sarah's memory, but instead he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Chapter 5. The day Tolliver spent the rest of Saturday in a state of nervous energy. He checked his weather data obsessively, more to distract himself than because anything had changed. The storms were still on track to move through Sunday night into Monday, and the forecast still showed only a slight risk of severe weather. His mother noticed his distraction immediately. Going out with Regan tonight, she said. It wasn't a question, just dinner, it's not a big deal. You've changed your shirt 3 times. I'm trying to find something that doesn't look too wrinkled from being in a suitcase. Linda smiled knowingly but didn't push. Instead, she offered to watch the girls, and Oliver gratefully accepted. At 6:45, Oliver pulled up in front of a small house on Elm Street. It was a charming place, white with blue shutters, a porch swing, flower boxes in the windows. Very Regan somehow, though he couldn't have said why. She came out before he could knock, wearing a sundress that made his mouth go dry. Her dark hair was down, falling in soft waves around her shoulders, and she'd put on makeup that made her green eyes even more striking. Hi, she said, a little breathlessly. You look nice. Do you? Really nice. They stood there for a moment, both suddenly shy, before Oliver remembered his manners and opened the car door for her. The Cattleman's Steakhouse was exactly as Oliver remembered it, dark wood paneling, red leather booths, the smell of grilled meat and cigarette smoke. Oklahoma hadn't banned smoking in restaurants yet. They were seated in a corner booth, away from the handful of other diners. I haven't been here in years, Regan said, looking around. I forgot how much this place hasn't changed. That a good thing or a bad thing? In Frogville, it's a good thing. Change happens slowly here, it's comforting. They ordered ribeye for Oliver, salmon for Regan, and fell into easy conversation. Oliver found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone about how hard it had been after Sarah died, about the guilt he felt when he had a good day and forgot to be sad, about how he worried he was failing his daughters. Not failing them, Regan said firmly. They're happy, healthy, well-adjusted kids. That doesn't happen by accident. Just feel like I'm not enough, like they need a mother and I can't be that for them. They don't need you to be their mother, they need you to be their father, and from what I can see, you're doing a great job of that. Oliver felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you, I needed to hear that. I ask you something. Regan's voice was tentative, and you can tell me if it's too personal. Ahead. Do you think you'll ever get married again? Not now, obviously, but someday. Oliver considered the question. A week ago, he would have said no without hesitation. The idea of being with someone who wasn't Sarah had seemed impossible, even wrong. But sitting here with Regan, feeling this connection, this spark. I don't know, he said honestly. I didn't think so, but maybe. Someday, Regan nodded, and Oliver thought he saw relief in her eyes. What about you? He asked. My mom said you dated someone for a while, Brad Johnson. We were together for 5 years. He wanted to move to Tulsa for a job, and I wouldn't. I was too scared to leave Frogville. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Pathetic, right? A grown woman too scared to leave her hometown. It's not pathetic, it's honest. You know what you want. Do I? Sometimes I think I'm just scared. Scared of change, scared of the unknown, scared of failing. So I stay here in my safe little bubble, teaching the same lessons year after year, living in the same house, shopping at the same stores. It's comfortable, but is it living? Oliver reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture felt natural, right? I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. It takes courage to know yourself, too. Know what makes you happy. Most people spend their whole lives chasing things they think they're supposed to want. Regan's eyes were shining. When did you get so wise? Grief teaches you things. Hard things, but important things. They talked through dinner and dessert, the conversation ranging from deep to silly and back again. Oliver learned that Regan was terrified of spiders, loved old movies, and could quote entire episodes of Friends. Regan learned that Oliver was a terrible cook, missed his father every day, and had a secret love of country music that he'd never admitted to his Chicago friends. By the time they left the restaurant, it was after 10, and the sky had clouded over. Lightning flickered in the distance, and Oliver could feel the electricity in the air. Storm's coming, he said, looking up. Should we be worried? Not tonight, tomorrow night maybe, but I'll be monitoring it. He drove her home, and they sat in the car outside her house, neither wanting the evening to end. I had a really good time, Regan said softly. Me too, better than good, actually. We do it again, before you leave, I mean. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. They looked at each other, and Oliver felt the pull, the magnetic attraction. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. But when Regan's hand came up to cup his cheek when she leaned into him, it became something more, something real. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Regan whispered, "Yeah, wow, I should go in." "You should." But neither of them moved for a long moment. Finally, Regan opened the car door. "Call me tomorrow, first thing." Oliver watched her walk to her door, watched her turn and wave before going inside. Then he sat in his car for a few minutes, his heart racing, his mind spinning. He'd kissed someone who wasn't Sarah, and it had felt good. He'd expected to feel guilty, to feel like he was betraying her memory. But instead, he felt alive. For the first time in 2 years, he felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. As he drove back to his mother's house, lightning flashed across the sky, closer now. The storm was coming, but Oliver wasn't afraid. Chapter 6. The calm Sunday morning dawned gray and humid. Oliver woke early, his mind immediately going to two things, Regan and the weather. He checked his phone first. No messages from Regan, but it was only 6:30 a.m. Too early to call. Then he checked his weather data, and his stomach dropped. Overnight, the models had shifted. The low-pressure system that had been forecast to bring scattered storms was now showing signs of significant intensification. The Storm Prediction Center had upgraded the area to a moderate risk, the second highest category. The forecast discussion used words like significant severe weather outbreak and strong tornadoes possible. Oliver pulled up the latest satellite imagery and radar data. The system was still over the Texas Panhandle, but it was organizing rapidly. A strong jet stream was diving down from the Rockies, providing the wind shear needed for rotating storms. The surface temperature was forecast to reach the mid-80s, with dew points in the upper 60s, plenty of instability. All the ingredients were coming together. Oliver's phone rang, making him jump. It was Sam. "You seeing this?" Sam's voice was tight with worry. "Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The models have definitely gotten more aggressive. The news is saying possible tornadoes tomorrow evening. Should we study the data? I think we should be prepared. The setup is looking more significant than I initially thought, But Sam, the forecast is still for tomorrow evening, Monday. We have time. What should people do? Make sure they have a plan. Know where their safe places, basement, interior room, whatever. Have supplies ready, charge their phones, the usual. Will you come to the town meeting this afternoon? The mayor's calling one at the community center. People would feel better hearing from an expert. Oliver hesitated. He wasn't here in an official capacity, but these were his people, Hishamtown, if he could help. Yeah, I'll be there. What time? 2 o'clock. After hanging up, Oliver spent the next hour analyzing the data, running different scenarios. The most likely outcome was a line of severe thunderstorms with damaging winds and large hail, possibly a few tornadoes. But there was a less likely but more dangerous scenario: discrete supercell thunderstorms that could produce strong, long-track tornadoes. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Meteorology was as much art as science, and even with all his experience and technology, he couldn't predict exactly what would happen. His mother found him in the dining room, surrounded by printouts and laptop screens. Worried, she said, the forecast has gotten worse. Not catastrophic, but worse. Should we leave? Go back to Chicago? Oliver considered it. The safest thing would be to pack up and drive north, get ahead off the system. But something held him back. Maybe it was professional pride. He wanted to see this through, to prove he could handle it. Maybe it was the thought of leaving Regan so soon after finding her again. No, we'll be fine. We just need to be prepared. Make sure the storm cellar is ready, have flashlights and water down there. We'll monitor it closely tomorrow. Linda nodded, trusting his judgment. I'll get the cellar ready today. At noon, Oliver called Regan. Hi, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. I was hoping you'd call. I promised I would. Listen, are you free this afternoon? There's a town meeting about the weather, and I thought maybe afterward we could. I'll be at the meeting. I'm on the school emergency committee, but yes, afterward I'd love to see you. It's a date, again. I like the sound of that. Frogville Community Center was packed when Oliver arrived at 1:45. It seemed like half the town had shown up, filling the folding chairs and lining the walls. Oliver spotted Regan near the front and made his way over to her. Big turnout, he said, sliding into the seat she'd saved for him. People are scared. We don't usually get moderate risk forecasts. And everyone remembers 74. The mayor, a portly man named Bill Henderson, called the meeting to order. I introduced Oliver as our local expert who's come home to help us, which made Oliver feel both proud and uncomfortable. Oliver stood and walked to the front where someone had set up a projector. He'd brought his laptop with the latest data. Thanks for coming, everyone. I know weather meetings aren't usually this well attended. A few nervous laughs. I want to start by saying that we're not in immediate danger. The severe weather isn't forecast until tomorrow evening, Monday. But the forecast has become more concerning overnight, so I wanted to make sure everyone is prepared. He pulled up the radar imagery. This is the system we're watching. It's currently over the Texas Panhandle, and it's going to move northeast through Oklahoma tomorrow. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a moderate risk for our area, which means there's a significant chance of severe weather. What kind of severe weather? Someone called out. Large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. Possibly strong tornadoes. A murmur ran through the crowd. Now, I want to emphasize that this is still a forecast, not a certainty. Weather isn't predictable and things can change. But I believe in being prepared for the worst and hoping for the best. He spent the next 30 minutes going over safety procedures, answering questions, and trying to strike a balance between being honest about the danger and not causing panic. By the end, people seemed more informed, if not entirely reassured. As the crowd dispersed, several people came up to thank Oliver personally. He shook hands, accepted hugs from old teachers and neighbors, and tried not to think about the data he'd seen that morning. Finally, it was just him and Regan. You were good up there, she said. Calm, authoritative, people trust you. I hope I'm right. I'd hate to cause a panic over nothing. Better safe than sorry, right? They walked out into the parking lot. The sky was overcast and the air felt heavy, oppressive. Want to come over? Regan asked. I could make dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. I should check on the girls, make sure they're okay. Bring them. I'd love to get to know them better. So Oliver went back to his mother's house, collected Tiffany and Annabelle, who were thrilled at the prospect of going to Dad's friend's house, and drove to Regan's. The evening was surprisingly normal. Regan made spaghetti while the girls explored her house, exclaiming over her collection of children's books and her two cats. They ate dinner on the back porch, watching the clouds build in the southwest. "Is the storm coming tonight?" Annabelle asked, a hint of fear in her voice. "Tonight, sweetie," Oliver assured her. "Tomorrow, and we'll be safe, I promise." After dinner, the girls played with the cats while Oliver and Regan sat on the porch swing watching the sky. "I'm scared," Regan admitted quietly. "I've lived through tornado warnings before, but thys feels different, more serious." "Be okay. I'll make sure of it." "Will you stay with me? Tomorrow, I mean, when the storms come." Oliver thought about his mother's house, about his equipment set up there, about his responsibility to monitor the situation. But he also thought about Regan, about this connection they'd found, about not wanting to be apart from her. "Where's your safe place?" he asked. "I don't have a basement, just an interior bathroom." "Then you should come to my mom's house. We have a storm cellar, it's the safest place." "You sure?" "I don't want to impose. Regan, I want you there. I want to know you're safe." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Okay, thank you." They sat in comfortable silence, the swing creaking gently, the distant rumble of thunder growing closer. Tomorrow would bring the storm. But tonight they had this moment offpiece. Oliver just wished he could shake the feeling that something was wrong, that he was missing something important in the data. The forecast called for severe weather, yes, but his instincts, those instincts his father had taught him to trust, were screaming that thys was going to be worse than anyone expected, much worse. Chapter 7. May 21, 1998 Monday morning arrived with an eerie stillness. Oliver woke at dawn and immediately went to check his data. What he saw made his blood run cold. The overnight models had continued to trend worse. The Storm Prediction Center had issued a high risk, the highest category for central Oklahoma, including Frogville. The forecast discussion was alarming, particularly dangerous situation. Violent tornadoes possible, long-track tornadoes, significant threat to life and property. Oliver's hands shook as he pulled up the latest atmospheric data. Every parameter was off the charts. Cape values over 4,000 J/kg, extreme instability. Wind shear perfect for supercells. A strong dry line setting up across western Oklahoma. Surface temperatures forecast to reach the upper 80s with dew points in the low 70s. It was a perfect setup for a major tornado outbreak. And he told everyone it would just be scattered severe storms. "Oh God," Oliver whispered. "I got it wrong, I got it so wrong." His mother appeared in the doorway, already dressed. "Oliver, what's wrong?" "The forecast, it's much worse than I thought. Mom, we could see violent tornadoes today. Multiple tornadoes, this could be really bad." Linda's face went pale. "What do? We prepare. We make sure the storm cellar is ready. We monitor the situation closely, and we pray I'm wrong." But Oliver knew he wasn't wrong. The data was clear. The question wasn't if severe weather would hit Frogville, but when and how bad it would be. He called Sam first, then the mayor, then the local radio station. Within an hour, word was spreading through town. This was serious. This was dangerous. People needed to be ready. Regan called at 9 a.m. "Oliver, I'm seeing the news. They're saying high risk now. Is it really that bad?" "Yeah, it's that bad. Are you coming over? School's been canceled." "I'm packing a bag now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Oliver spent the morning glued to his monitors, watching the system develop over western Oklahoma. By noon, the first tornado warnings were being issued for Countisto, the west. By 1 p.m., the first reports of tornadoes on the ground were coming in. The storms were moving northeast at 40 mph. At that speed, they'd reach Frogville by early evening. Regan arrived with a small overnight bag and a scared expression. Oliver pulled her in tow, a hug. "We're going to be okay," he said, trying to convince himself as much as her. "Promise." But even as he said it, Oliver was watching the radar, watching a massive supercell thunderstorm develop over western Oklahoma. The storm had a textbook hook echo, the signature of a tornadic supercell, and it was heading straight for them. By 3 p.m., the sky had taken on a sickly yellow-green color. The air was thick and still, the kind of oppressive calm that came before the worst storms. Birds had stopped singing, dogs were barking nervously throughout the neighborhood. Oliver's mother had the storm cellar ready, flashlights, water, blankets, a battery-powered radio. Tiffany and Annabelle were trying to be brave, but Oliver could see fear in their eyes. "Dad, I'm scared," Annabelle whispered, climbing into his lap. "I know, baby, but we're going to be safe in the storm cellar. It's underground, very strong. Nothing can hurt us there." "Will our house be okay?" Oliver couldn't lie to her. "I don't know. But houses can be rebuilt. People can't. That's why we're going to be safe underground." At 4:30 p.m., the tornado sirens began to wail. Oliver's phone buzzed with the alert. "Tornado warning for FROGVILLEANDSURROUNDING areas. Large and extremely dangerous tornado ONTHE ground. Take cover now. This is a particularly dangerous situation. Everyone to the cellar," Oliver shouted. Now, they grabbed their emergency supplies and ran for the backyard, where the storm cellar doors were already open. Linda went down first, then the girls, then Regan. Oliver paused at the top of the stairs, looking at the southwestern sky. What he saw made his heart stop. A massive wedge tornado, easily a mile wide, was bearing down on Frogville. It was the largest tornado Oliver had ever seen, a churning black mass that seemed to fill the entire sky. Lightning flickered within it, and the roar was like a freight train, growing louder by the second. "Oliver!" Regan screamed from below. "Get down here!" Oliver tore his eyes away from the monster and scrambled down the stairs, pulling the heavy cellar doors shut behind him. He'd barely gotten them latched when the world above exploded into chaos. Chapter 8. The monster. The sky had turned black. Not the gray-black of a normal thunderstorm, but an apocalyptic darkness that swallowed the afternoon sun whole. It was the color of the void, of nothingness, a suffocating blanket of pitch that made Oliver's primitive brain scream that the world wasting. And maybe it was. As they ran for the cellar, Oliver looked back one last time. The tornado filled the entire southwestern horizon, a mile-wide monster of churning debris and death. It wasn't just dark. It was alive with movement, with destruction, with malevolence. Trees were being ripped from the earth like weeds, their roots tearing free with sounds like bones breaking. A car tumbled through the air, spinning end over end before disappearing into black maw. And the sound, God, the sound. It wasn't a freight train. It was a lion, a massive, predatory beast roaring its dominance over the earth. The bestial shriek grew louder with every second, a sound so primal and terrifying that Oliver's legs nearly gave out. It was the scream of a creature from nightmare, from hell itself, and it was coming for them. The tornado sirens wailed across Frogville, their mechanical screech adding to the cacophony. The sound was deafening, disorienting, a warning that came too late for too many. "Oliver!" Regan screamed from below. "Get down here!" Oliver tore his eyes away from the monster and scrambled down the stairs, pulling the heavy cellar doors shut behind him. He'd barely gotten them latched when the world above exploded into chaos. The storm cellar was small, maybe 8 feet by 10 feet, with concrete walls and a dirt floor. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, powered by a battery. In the dim light, Oliver could see the terror on everyone's faces. The roar grew louder, impossibly louder. The predator was closing in, and its scream shook the very foundation of the earth. The cellar doors rattled violently, the metal hinges shrieking as the wind tried to tear them open. Dust rained down from the ceiling in thick clouds. Tiffany and Annabelle were crying, clinging to their grandmother. Regan had her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes squeezed shut, her lips moving in what might have been prayer. The ground began to shake. Not just vibrate, shake, like an earthquake, like the earth itself was trying to tear apart. Oliver could hear trees being ripped from the ground. Above them, the roots tearing free with sounds like gunshots. Crack, 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 and then he heard the screaming, people outside, neighbors who hadn't made it to shelter in time. Their screams were high and desperate and cut off too quickly, swallowed by the lion's roar. Oliver pulled out his phone, trying to get a signal. Nothing. The tornado must have taken out the cell towers. The battery radio crackled to life. Extremely dangerous tornado on THEGROUND in FROGVILLE. Multiple reports of complete destruction. If you are in the path of this storm, take cover immediately. This is a life-threatening situation. The darkness was absolute now. Even with the bare bulb, Oliver felt like he was drowning in blackness, suffocating in it. The roar was so loud he couldn't hear himself think. It was inside his head, inside his chest, vibrating through his bones. And then there was a sound like the hand of God slamming down on the earth. The house above them exploded. Oliver heard it disintegrate, wood splintering, glass shattering, metal shrieking as it was torn apart. The cellar shook so violently that Oliver was thrown to his knees. The light bulb swung wildly, casting insane shadows on the walls. A car crashed into something above them. Oliver heard the impact, felt it through the concrete. Then another sound, a massive tree trunk being driven through the house like a spear. It's okay," Oliver heard himself saying, though he wasn't sure if anyone could hear him over the beast's roar. "We're safe down here, we're safe." But he wasn't sure they were safe. The tornado sounded like it was right on top of them, like they were inside the creature's mouth, and the cellar was shaking so violently that cracks were appearing in the concrete walls. Regan grabbed his hand, squeezing so hard it hurt. He squeezed back, trying to give her strength he didn't feel. The roar reached a crescendo, a sound so loud, so overwhelming that Oliver's ears went numb. It was the scream of the apocalypse, the death cry of the world. And then, with a sound like reality itself tearing apart, something massive crashed through what was left of the house above them. The cellar doors buckled inward with a metallic shriek. Debris began raining down through the gaps, chunks of wood, shards of glass, twisted metal. The darkness became absolute as the bulb shattered, plunging them into a void of black. Oliver threw himself over the girls, shielding them with his body. He felt something hit his back, something heavy and sharp, and pain exploded through his shoulder. Warm blood ran down his spine. "Mom," he screamed into the darkness, but his voice was swallowed by the lion's roar. In the pitch black, Oliver heard rather than saw what happened next. A tremendous crack as a roof beam, maybe the main support beam of the entire house, crashed through the ceiling. A heavy thud. His mother's sharp gasp cut short. "No." Oliver tried to get to her, but the debris was still falling and he couldn't leave the girls unprotected. He couldn't see anything. The darkness was complete, suffocating, like being buried alive. The roar continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The beast circled, screamed, destroyed. Oliver held his daughters and prayed to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore, and then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The silence was almost as terrifying as the noise had been. Oliver's ears rang in thebescence of sound. He could hear his own heartbeat, his ragged breathing, the girl's quiet sobs. "Is everyone okay?" Oliver's voice sounded strange in his own ears, muffled and distant. "I'm okay," Tiffany said shakily. "Me too," Annabelle whimpered. "I'm okay," Regan said, though her voice was trembling. "Mom," Oliver called into the darkness. "Mom, are you okay?" No answer. Oliver fumbled for his phone, using its dim light to see. The cellar was a disaster, debris everywhere, the ceiling partially collapsed, dust so thick it was hard to breathe. And there, on the other side of the cellar, was his mother. The beam was across her chest, and even in the phone's weak light, Oliver could see blood. So much blood. "Mom, can you hear me?" Linda's eyes fluttered open. "Oliver," she whispered. "The girls, they're fine. Everyone's fine. Just hold on, okay? I'm going to get this off you." But even as he said it, Oliver knew it was bad. The beam was massive and Linda's breathing was shallow and labored. He tried to lift the beam, but it was too heavy. Andhi's injured shoulder screamed in protest. "Regan, help me." Together, they managed to shift the beam enough to pull Linda free. Oliver cradled his mother's head in his lap and his hands came away wet with blood. "Mom, stay with me. Please stay with me." "I'm okay, honey." But her voice was weak, fatting. "Take care of the girls and Oliver. Don't be afraid to love again. Sarah would want you to be happy." "No, no, 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 stay with me, please." But Linda's eyes were closing and her breathing was slowing. "Love you, Mom. Please don't leave me." "You, too." And then she was gone. Oliver sat there, holding his mother's body, unable to process what had just happened. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to be safe in the cellar. Everyone was supposed to survive. Tiffany's small voice broke through his shock. "Is Grandma?" Oliver couldn't answer. He just held his mother and cried. Regan gathered the girls to her, holding them close, giving Oliver space to grieve. But after a few minutes, she spoke gently. "Oliver, we need to get out of here. The cellar's not stable and there might be gas leaks or fires. We need to get to safety." Oliver nodded numbly. She was right. He carefully laid his mother down, closing her eyes, and then stood on shaking legs. "Okay, everyone stay close to me. Watch for debris and sharp objects. And girls, don't look at Grandma. Just follow me, okay?" They climbed the stairs carefully, pushing aside debris. When Oliver finally got the cellar doors open and looked out, he couldn't believe what he saw. The house was gone, not damaged, not partially destroyed. Gone, where his mother's house had stood, there was now just a concrete foundation and scattered debris. The trees in the yard had been stripped bare, reduced to splinter-red stumps. Cars were overturned and mangled. And in every direction, as far as Oliver could see, there was nothing but devastation. Frogville had been destroyed. Chapter 9. Aftermath. The scene that greeted them above ground was apocalyptic. Oliver stood on what used to be his mother's front lawn, turning in a slow circle, trying to comprehend the scale of destruction. The entire neighborhood was gone, not damaged, but erased. Houses reduced to foundations, trees stripped to bare trunks, cars tossed like toys. The air was thick with dust and the smell of natural gas and something else, something Oliver didn't want to identify. In the distance he could hear sirens and screaming. "Oh my God," Regan whispered, her hand over her mouth. "My God." Tiffany and Annabelle clung to Oliver, their faces buried in his sides. He wrapped his arms around them, his injured shoulder throbbing, and tried to think. They needed to get to safety, to find help. A voice called from the rubble. Sam Whitaker emerged from what used to be Beth's house next door, his face covered in blood and dust. "Thank God you're alive, Icefrion." He stopped when he saw Oliver's expression. "Who did we lose?" "My mom." Oliver's voice broke. She's still in the cellar." Sam's face crumpled. "Jesus, I'm so sorry, man. She was a good woman. About your family. Jenny and the boys are okay. We were in our cellar, but Oliver, it's bad out here. Really bad. I've seen at least 3 bodies already, and there are people trapped in the rubble. We need to start searching, helping whoever we can." Oliver looked down at his daughters. They were traumatized, terrified, and they'd just lost their grandmother. But there were people out there who needed help. "Regan, can you take the girls to where's safe?" "The school," Regan said, her voice steadier now. "It's brick and it's on the north side often. If it's still standing, that's where people will gather." "Okay, take them there. I'll come find you as soon as I can." "Oliver, you're hurt, your shoulder." "Fine, please just keep them safe." Regan nodded, understanding. She took Tiffany and Annabelle's hands. "Come on, girls, we're going to go find somewhere safe and your dad will come get you soon." "Okay, I don't want to leave Dad," Annabelle cried. "I know, sweetie, but your dad needs to help people. He's a hero, and we need to let them be a hero right now." Oliver watched them pick their way through the debris, heading north. Then he turned to Sam. "Where do we start?" For the next 3 hours, Oliver and Sam searched through the rubble, calling out for survivors, digging through debris with their bare hands. They found Mrs. Patterson fromed on the street, trapped under a collapsed wall but alive. They found the Morrison family huddled in their bathtub, miraculously unscathed. They found bodies, 2 neighbors, friends, people Oliver had known his whole life. The tornado had been an EF5, the strongest category. The damage was consistent with winds over 200 mph. It had carved a path of total destruction through the heart of Frogville, a mile-wide scar that stretched for miles. As the sun began to set, emergency crews started arriving from surrounding towns. Ambulances, fire trucks, search and rescue teams. Oliver gave them what information could, then finally made his way toward the school. The walk took 20 minutes through the devastated town. Main Street wasn't recognizable. Gino's Pizza was gone. The hardware store was gone. The church steeple lay in the middle of the road. But as Oliver got closer to the north side of town, the damage lessened. Some houses were still standing, though damaged. And then Hessoet, Frogville Elementary School, still standing, its brick walls intact. The parking lot was full of people, survivors gathering, looking for loved ones, trying to make sense of what had happened. Oliver spotted Regan immediately, sitting on Theckerb with Tiffany and Annabelle. When she saw him, she jumped up and ran to him, throwing her arms around him. "Okay? Thank God you're okay." "I'm okay." Oliver held her tight, feeling her shake. Are the girls? They're okay, scared but okay. Oliver, the school, the tornado hit it. The whole south wing is destroyed. If I'd been here, if school had been in session. He didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Oliver pulled back to look at her. But you weren't. You were with us. You're safe. Your mom saved my life. If she hadn't invited me to her house if I'd been here. Think about that. Just don't. They sat with the girls, and Oliver held his daughters close, feeling their heartbeats, their warmth, their aliveness. He'd lost his mother, but his daughters were safe. That was what mattered. As night fell, the mayor set up a command center in the school gym. The news wascrim, 10 confirmed dead, including Oliver's mother. Over 200 injured, hundreds of homes destroyed. The entire downtown area was gone, but it could have been worse. If Oliver hadn't warned people, if they hadn't been prepared, the death toll could have been in the dozens or even hundreds. You saved lives today, the mayor told Oliver. Your warning gave people time to take shelter. You're a hero. But Oliver didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a failure. He'd underestimated the storm. He'd told people it would just be scattered severe weather, and instead they'd gotten a monster. His mother had died because he'd been wrong. I should have known, he said to Regan later as they sat in the school cafeteria drinking coffee from the Red Cross. I should have seen it coming. You did see it coming. You warned everyone. You told them to be prepared. I didn't tell them how bad it would be. I didn't. Oliver, stop. You're a meteorologist, not a fortune teller. You did everything you could with the information you had. And because of you, hundreds of people are alive right now, including me, including your daughters. Oliver wanted to believe her. But the guilt was crushing and the grief was overwhelming, and he didn't know how to process any of it. They spent the night in the school, along with dozens of other survivors. Oliver held his daughters while they slept, and Regan stayed close, her presence a comfort he didn't deserve but desperately needed. Tomorrow they would start the long process of recovery. Tomorrow they would bury Thed and begin rebuilding. Tomorrow they would figure out how to move forward. But tonight they just survived. Chapter 10. Rebuilding the days after the tornado blurred together in a haze of grief, exhaustion, and overwhelming need. Oliver moved through them like a ghost, doing what needed to be done but feeling disconnected from it all. There were funerals to arrange. His mother's was held 4 days after the tornado in a church that had lost its roof but still had its walls. Half the town showed up, despite their own losses and struggles. Linda Chen had been beloved in Frogville, and people wanted to pay their respects. Oliver stood at the graveside, his daughters on either side of him, and tried to find words. But what could you say? That his mother had been kind, generous, loving, everyone knew that. That she died protecting her family. That felt too raw, too painful. In the end, he just said, she loved this town. She loved all of you. And she died doing what she always did, taking care of the people she loved. Regan stood beside him throughout, a steady presence. She'd barely left his side since the tornado, helping with the girls, making arrangements, just being there. Oliver didn't know what he would have done without her. In the darkest moments, when he woke up at 3 a.m. in the FEM trailer they'd been assigned, when he had to explain to Annabelle again why Grandma wasn't coming back, when the guilt threatened to swallow him whole, Regan was there. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just held his hand and let him feel what he needed to feel. 2 weeks after the tornado, Oliver sat on the steps of what used to be his mother's house. The foundation was still there, a concrete slab surrounded by debris that had been partially cleared. The insurance adjuster had come and gone. The death certificate had been filed. The estate lawyer had explained that everything, the house, the land, Amodus savings account, now belonged to Oliver. He didn't want any of it. He wanted his mother back. Dad, Oliver looked up to see Tiffany standing there, holding 2 bottles of water. She'd been so strong through all of this, taking care of her little sister, helping where she could. Too strong for a 10-year-old. Hey, sweetheart, what's up? Are we going back to Chicago soon? The question hit Oliver like a physical blow. Chicago, his business, his life. He'd been so consumed with the immediate crisis that he hadn't thought about what came next. I don't know. Why do you ask? Tiffany sat down beside him, handing him one of the water bottles. I heard you talking to Uncle Sam. He said you probably needed to get back to work. Oliver took a long drink, buying time. Sam had said that, hadn't he? That Oliver's business couldn't run itself forever, that his clients would start looking elsewhere if Head didn't get back soon. Would you want to go back? Oliver asked carefully. Tiffany was quiet for a moment, picking at the label on her water bottle. I miss our house and my friends, but she looked up at him with eyes that were far too old for her face. I don't want to leave Regan, and I think you don't either. Oliver's throat tightened. Tiff, it's okay, Dad, I like her. Annabelle likes her too. And you smile when you're with her. You haven't smiled like that since Mom. Oliver pulled his daughter close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. When did y'all get so wise? I'm 10. I'm practically ancient. Despite everything, Oliver laughed. It felt strange, foreign, but also necessary, like his body was remembering how to be human again. That night, after the girls were asleep in the trailer, Oliver walked to the temporary shelter that had been set up at the high school. Regan was there, as she was most nights, helping coordinate relief efforts and checking on her students and their families. She looked exhausted. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and there were shadows under her green eyes. But when she saw Oliver, her face lit up with a smile that made his chest ache. Hey, she said, walking over to him. I didn't expect to see you tonight. How are Thegrals? Asleep. Finally. Oliver took her hand, needing the contact. Can we talk? Somewhere private. Concern flickered across her face, but she nodded. They walked outside, away from the bustle of the shelter, and sat on a bench that had somehow survived the tornado intact. What's wrong? Regan asked. Nothing's wrong, I need to tell you something. Oliver took a deep breath. I'm not going back to Chicago. Regan stared at him. What? I'm staying here, in Frogville. I'm going to rebuild my mother's house, and I'm going to toss it up a research station here. I'm going to dedicate my life to making sure what happened on May 21st never happens again. Oliver, that's a huge decision. What about your business? Your life in Chicago? My business can be run from anywhere, and my life. He turned to face her fully, taking both of her hands in his. My life is here now, with you, if you'll have me. Tears welled up in Regan's eyes. Are you sure? You're not just saying this because everything that's happened. Because of the grief and the trauma. I'm saying it because for the first time in 2 years I feel alive again. Because when I think about leaving you, about going back to Chicago and only seeing you on weekends or holidays, I can't breathe. Because my daughters need stability and love, and you giveth them both. He reached up to cup her face. Because I love you, Regan. I think I've loved you since we were kids, and I was just too stupid to realize it. Oliver. Regan was crying now, but she was also smiling. I love you too. I've loved you for so long. They kissed then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It wasn't like their first kiss, urgent and desperate. This was different. This was a beginning. When they finally pulled apart, Regan rested her forehead against his. So you're really staying. I'm going to bring my team here, set up a proper meteorological research center. We're going to study tornado formation. Improve prediction models, develop better early warning systems. I'm going to make sure my mother didn't die for nothing. Be so proud of you, Regan whispered. I hope so. Oliver pulled her close, holding her like she was the only solid thing in our world that had been torn apart. Will you help me? Will you be part of this new life I'm building? Yes, Regan said without hesitation. Yes, I will. Chapter 11. A new purpose. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of activity. Oliver threw himself into his new mission with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He knew it was partly a way to avoid dealing with his grief, but it was also genuine passion. He'd spent his career predicting weather for profit. Now he wanted to predict it to save lives. The first step was convincing his team in Chicago to relocate. It wasn't an easy sell. Frogville was a small town in the middle of nowhere, recently devastated by a tornado. Why would anyone want to move there? But Oliver was persuasive. He offered generous relocation packages, promised cutting-edge research opportunities, and painted a vision of a meteorological research center that would revolutionize tornado prediction. One by one, his key team members agreed. Marcus Chen, his lead data analyst, was the first to commit. You saved my life once, boss, he said over the phone. Remember that conference in Miami when you told men not to go sailing because a storm was coming? Everyone else said the weather was fine, but you insisted. That storm turned into a waterspout that capsized 3 boats. Soy, if you say this is important, I'm in. Sarah Kim, his atmospheric physicist, was next. "I've been wanting to do more research-focused work anyway," she said. "And honestly, after what happened in Frogville, I think we owe it to those people to do better." By August, Oliver had assembled a team of 12 researchers and technicians, all committed to relocating to Frogville. The town donated land on the outskirts, a plot that had been a farm before the tornado destroyed everything on it. Oliver used his savings, his mother's life insurance, and a grant from the National Weather Service to begin construction on the research center. The building was designed to withstand an EF5 tornado. Reinforced concrete walls, a safe room that could shelter 50 people, backup generators, and state-of-the-art equipment. It would be called the Linda Chen Meteorological Research Center. Oliver worked 16-hour days, splitting his time between overseeing construction, analyzing data from the May 21st tornado, and caring for his daughters. Regan Wasser through all of it, helping with the girls, bringing him dinner when he forgot to eat, reminding him that he was human and needed to rest. One evening in late September, Oliver was in the temporary office he'd set up in Adonated Trailer, staring at computer models of the tornado that had killed his mother. He'd been over the data 1,000 times, trying to understand where he'd gone wrong. "Going to burn out," Regan said from the doorway. Oliver looked up, rubbing his tired eyes. "I need to figure out what I missed. The signs were all there. The atmospheric instability, the wind shear, the moisture content. I should have known it would be an F5. Regan walked over and gently closed his laptop. "You're one person, Oliver. You can't predict everything." "That's exactly what I'm supposed to do. That's my job." "Your job is to do your best with the information you have. You told people a severe storm was coming. You told them to take shelter. You saved hundreds of lives that day. Not my mother's." There it was, the guilt that had been eating at him for months. Regan pulled up a chair and sat down, taking his hands in hers. "Your mother's death wasn't your fault. A tornado killed her. A random, chaotic act of nature. You couldn't have prevented it. I should have insisted she come to the cellar sooner. I should have." "Oliver, stop." Regan's voice was firm but gentle. "You can't carry this guilt forever. Your mother wouldn't want you to. She'd want you to live, to love, to be happy. And she'd be so proud of what you're doing here." Oliver felt tears burning in his eyes. "I miss her so much." "I know, I miss her too." Regan moved to sit in his lap, wrapping her arms around him. "But she's still with you. In the work you're doing, in the lives you're going to save, in the way you love your daughters, she's still here." Oliver held her tight, letting himself cry for the first time since the funeral. Regan just felt him, stroking his hair, letting him grieve. When he finally pulled himself together, Oliver looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you for everything, for being here, for believing in me, for loving me even when I'm a mess." "You're my mess," Regan said with a soft smile, "and I wouldn't have it any other way." By October, the research center was taking shape. The foundation was poured, fuels were going up, and equipment was being ordered. Oliver's team began arriving in Frogville, and the town welcomed them with open arms. These were the people how are going to help protect them from future storms. They were heroes. Oliver also began working with the National Weather Service to improve their tornado warning protocols. He shared his data from May 21st, his analysis of what went wrong, and his recommendations for better prediction models. Some of his ideas were controversial. They required more funding, more sophisticated equipment, more trained meteorologists. But after Frogville, people were listening. One afternoon, Oliver got a call from Dr. James Morrison, the director of the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. "Mr. Chen, I've been reviewing your proposals," Dr. Morrison said. "They're ambitious, some might say impossible," Oliver prompted. "But after what happened in Frogville, we need ambitious. We need impossible. I'd like to offer you a consulting position with the SPC. We want your expertise, your data, your insights, and we want to partner with your research center once it's operational." Oliver felt a surge of hope. This was what he'd been working toward. "I accept, on one condition." "What's that?" "Any improvements we develop, any new prediction models or warning systems, they get implemented immediately. No bureaucratic delays, no budget concerns. If we can't save lives, we do it." There was a pause. Then Dr. Morrison said, "Deal. Welcome aboard, Mr. Chen." After he hung up, Oliver sat back in his chair and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to make up for the lives lost on May 21st. But it was a start. That evening, he took Regan and the girls out to dinner at Gino's Pizza, the place where he and Regan had reconnected. The restaurant had been damaged in the tornado but had reopened in August, a symbol of Frogville's resilience. "Have some news," Oliver announced once they'd ordered. "The Storm Prediction Center wants to partner with us. They're going to help fund the research center and implement our findings." "Dad, that's amazing," Tiffany said. "Does that mean we're definitely staying here?" Annabelle asked. Oliver looked at Regan, then back at his daughters. "Yes, we're staying. Frogville is our home now." Annabelle grinned. "Good. I like it here and I like Regan." "I like Regan too," Tiffany added with a knowing smile. Regan blushed. "I like you guys too, all of you." Under the table, Oliver took Regan's hand and squeezed. She squeezed back, and in that moment, Oliver felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Peace. Chapter 12. Staying November brought cooler weather and the first real signs of recovery in Frogville. The debris had been cleared, temporary housing had been set up for those who'd lost their homes, and reconstruction was underway throughout the town. Regan's school was being rebuilt. The old building had been completely destroyed, but the new one would be bigger, better, and tornado-resistant. Regan had been heavily involved in the design process, working with architects to create a space that would be both educational and safe. "Want every classroom to have a storm shelter," she told Oliver one evening as they reviewed the blueprints. "I never want to worry about my students' safety again." "That's going to be expensive," Oliver pointed out. "I don't care. We'll fundraise, we'll apply for grants, we'll do whatever it takes. These kids deserve to feel safe." Oliver smiled. This was the Regan he'd fallen in love with, fierce, determined, protective. She'd always been afraid to leave Frogville, but now she was fighting to make it better. "You know," Oliver said carefully, "you could leave now if you wanted to. You've proven you're not afraid anymore. You could go anywhere, do anything." Regan looked up from the blueprints, her green eyes serious. "I don't want to leave. Not because I'm afraid, but because this is where I belong. This is my home, these are my people, and I want to be part of rebuilding it." She paused. "Is that okay? I know y'all give up Chicago for me, and I don't want you to think I'm not grateful." Oliver cut her off with a kiss. "It's more than okay, it's perfect. I don't want you to change who you are, Regan. I love you exactly as you are. Even though I'm a small-town girl who's never going to want to live in a big city, especially because of that." Oliver pulled her close. "You know what I've realized? I spent 20 years running away from Frogville because I thought it was too small, too limiting. But I was wrong. This town has more heart, more community, more genuine connection than anywhere I've ever lived. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be home." Regan rested her head on his chest. "Your mom would be so happy to hear you say that." "I know." Oliver's voice was thick with emotion. "I think about her every day. About how she never left this town, how she dedicated her life to the people here. I used to think that was a waste, that she could have done so much more somewhere else, but now I understand. She was exactly where she was supposed to be." "So are you," Regan said softly. In December, Oliver's research center was completed. The Linda Chen Meteorological Research Center officially opened on December 15th, with a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by half the town. Dr. Morrison came from Norman to speak, as did several state officials and representatives from the National Weather Service. But the most important moment came when Oliver stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and saw his daughters in the front row with Regan. Tiffany was holding a photo of her grandmother. Annabelle was holding Regan's hand. "My mother believed in community," Oliver began. "She believed that we're stronger together than we are apart. She believed that everyone deserves to feel safe in their own home, and she died protecting the people she loved." His voice cracked, but he pushed through. "This center is dedicated to her memory and to her values. We're going to use science, technology, and human dedication to protect communities like Frogville from future disasters. We're going to save lives, and we're going to do it together." Crowd erupted in applause. Oliver saw tears on many faces, people who'd lost loved ones in the tornado, people who'd lost their homes, people who were still rebuilding their lives, but he also saw hope, and determination, and resilience. After the ceremony, as people toured the facility and marveled at the equipment, Regan pulled Oliver aside. "Have something to tell you," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "What is it?" "The school board approved my proposal. We're going to have a meteorology program for the students. Starting in 5th grade, kids will learn about weather, storm safety, and basic forecasting." And I was hopping. She bit her lip nervously. "I was hopping your team might be willing to do some guest lectures." Oliver grinned. "Are you kidding? They'd love that. Marcus has been talking about doing more community outreach." "Really? That's amazing." Regan threw her arms around him. "This is going to be so good for the kids. They need to understand what happened, why it happened, and how to stay safe in the future." "You're incredible, you know that," Oliver said, holding her close. "I learned from the best," Regan replied, looking up at him with love in her eyes. That night, after the girls were asleep, Oliver and Regan sat on the porch of the house was rebuilding on his mother's land. It wasn't finished yet, the exterior was done, but the interior still needed work, but it was progress. "Been thinking," Oliver said, his arm around Regan's shoulders. "About what?" "About the future, about us." He turned to face her. "I know it's only been 7 months since we reconnected. I know we've been through hell and back, but I also know that I don't want to spend another day without you in my life." Regan's breath caught. "Oliver, I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet. I want to do this right, and I want the girls to bear it, and I want to make sure you're sure." He took her hand. "But I am asking you to move in with us. Once the house is finished, I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a life with you. I want us to be a family." Tears streamed down Regan's face. "Yes, yes, I want that too. I want all of it." They kissed under the stars in the town where they'd both grown up, on the land where Oliver's mother had lived and died. And for the first time since May 21st, Oliver felt like everything was going to be okay. Epilogue. 1 year later, May 21st, 1999, the memorial service was held at noon in the town square. A monument had been erected, a black granite wall with the names of the 10 people who died in the tornado. Linda Chen's name was near the top. Oliver stood with Regan and his daughters, along with what seemed like the entire town of Frogville. The mayor spoke about resilience and community. The pastor spoke about faith and healing. And then Oliver was asked to say a few words. He walked to the podium, his heart heavy but also full. "A year ago today, our town was devastated by an EF5 tornado. We lost 10 beloved members of our community. We lost homes, businesses, and a sense of security, but we didn't lose our spirit." He looked out at the crowd. "In the past year, we've rebuilt, not just our buildings, but our lives. We've come together as a community in ways I never thought possible. We've supported each other, grieved together, and healed together." His eyes found Regan's. "The tornado took my mother from me, but it also brought me home. It reminded me what's truly important: family, community, love. And it gave me a purpose, to make sure that what happened here never happens again." Oliver gestured toward the research center visible in the distance. "The Linda Chen Meteorological Research Center has been operational for 5 months. In that time, we've improved tornado prediction accuracy by 23%. We've reduced false alarm rates by 15%. And most importantly, we've helped save lives in 3 different communities that were hit by tornadoes this spring." There was applause, but Oliver held up his hand. "We're not done. We won't be done until every community has the tools and knowledge they need to stay safe. Until every family has enough warning to take shelter. Until no one else has to lose someone they love to a tornado." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "My mother used to say that we're all connected, that what happens to one of us happens to all of us. I believe that now more than ever. So today, as we remember those we lost, let's also celebrate what we've built. Let's honor their memory by continuing to support each other, to love each other, and to make Frogville a place where everyone feels safe and welcome." As Oliver stepped down from the podium, Tiffany and Annabelle ran to hug him. Regan was right behind them, her eyes shining with tears and pride. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "I meant every word," Oliver replied. After the ceremony, people gathered at the newly rebuilt community center for a reception. Oliver found himself surrounded by well-wishers, people thanking him for his work, people sharing their own stories of loss and recovery. Sam Whitaker pulled him aside. You did good, man. Your mom would be proud. Thanks, Sam, for everything, for calling me that day, for being there when I needed you. That's what friends are for, Sam grinned. So when are you going to make an honest woman out of Regan? Oliver laughed. Soon, very soon, and he meant it. The ring was already bought, a simple diamond on a white gold band. He was planning to propose next month on Regan's birthday. He'd already asked Tiffany and Annabelle for their blessing, and they'd been thrilled. About time, Dad, Tiffany had said with a roll of her eyes. We've been waiting forever. As the afternoon wore on, Oliver found himself standing outside the community center, watching the town he'd once couldn't wait to leave. Children were playing in the park that had been rebuilt. Businesses were thriving. People were smiling, laughing, living. Frogville had survived. More than that, it had thrived. Regan came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking, Gabbo? About how much has changed in a year. About how much I've changed. You have any regrets? Oliver thought about it. About his life in Chicago, his successful business, the prestige money he'd given up. About his mother and how he wished he'd come home more often when she was alive. About Sarah and the life they'd planned together that would never be. No, he said finally. No regrets. Everything that happened, the good and the bad, led me here, to you, to this life, and I wouldn't change any of it. Regan leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Oliver Chen. I love you too, Regan. They stood there together, watching the sun begin to set over Frogville, Oklahoma. In the distance, Oliver could see the research center, its equipment constantly monitoring skis. His team was in there right now, analyzing data, improving models, working to protect communities across the country. His mother's legacy lived on. Not just in the building that bore her name, but in the work they were doing, the lives they were saving, the community they were building. Oliver thought about the storm that had brought him home, the monster that had roared like a lion and torn his world apart. It had taken so much from him. But it had also given him something precious, a second chance at life, at love, at purpose. The sky was clear now, painted in shades of orange and pink. No storms on the horizon, just peace and hope and the promise of tomorrow. Oliver pulled Regan closer and smiled. He was home, and he was never leaving again. The end.